Hi. This is Johannes, I'm Moritz, and today we will talk about the project Snapshots from Oberwolfach. And we are junior editors in this project, and we will quickly tell you what the project is all about, and then dive into our editorial work, what we actually do, to give you some examples. This has been presented many times at imaginary events already, so this is why we only quickly will tell you what the snapshots actually are. The snapshots are text written about current mathematical research by mathematicians who visit Oberwolfach, a mathematical research institute there. And the special thing about these texts is that they are not made for specialists, but for a wider audience. So our target audience are high school students, college students, math teachers, math journalists, especially people who are already interested in math and perhaps even have some math education already. So we are not trying to convince people that are not interested in math, but we speak to the people that are already hooked somehow. This is part of the Imaginary project. We are distributed via their website. You can print them. Usually we have some to distribute, but apparently there's none here now because they're so you can download them and print them, and there's new ones coming out all the time. This started in 2014, so we have more than you can read in a week or 2 weeks already, I would say. This is what they look like. This is the front pages of 2 of them. They're usually 8 or 12 pages long, so it probably takes you an afternoon to read and digest them. The goal here is also that they're still readable in 10 years, maybe, or perhaps. And this is why we choose this classical format. And the language is mostly English, but we have a few German ones, and there's also translations going on back and forth. No French ones so far. But we will focus on the editing process today. The mathematicians that write these articles are informed by us how they should write them beforehand, and that informed about their audience. And you got to understand that they're used to write to a highly specialized audience that only use technical language, and that not even trying to communicate their idea to a wider audience. So this is quite different for most of them, and this is where we come in. We help the authors to communicate their ideas to a wider audience and point out the pieces in their text that might be difficult to understand for a high school student, and trying to change it or add additional information, cross out stuff that is too difficult, and so on. And we want to now show you a few examples that are actually from past snapshots where we did this.
Okay, so let me walk you, if you want, through some of the examples. And for the rest of the talk, you will always see the snapshot as the authors submitted it to us on the top of the page, and then below that you will see what it looks like after the editing process. So this first example is about improving accessibility. Here, an author sent us a snapshot that was otherwise wonderful, but at this one spot he wrote, "Let V be the set of all points where all polynomials from I vanish. It suffices to check this just for the generators of I." So when I read this, I thought, wow, can somebody who has never heard about a vanishing set, or maybe never taken a class in algebra, understand this concept at this point? And I said, probably no, so let's try to make this more accessible. And how did we do this? Several entrance points, as in the previous talk. First, we added a formula for some people who already have some experience with math, but not with algebra. This might be the way to go. And then we added examples. So apart from making the text a little bit longer and maybe a little bit more wordy in order to make it easier to read, we also added these examples. And we wrote 2 examples are displayed in figure 4, the vanishing set of the ideal and so on. There's a circle, and then a 3rd example, and we also added this figure, which has 2 purposes. First, it helps understanding what a vanishing set is, and second, it makes the snapshot appear more digestible and more accessible we believe, as a whole. So in this example, we added several things to the snapshot, hoping that it would become more accessible. In other examples, we also delete parts that might overwhelm the readers. So here, in this snapshot that was very good also, the authors wrote something about patterns of radiation, brackets such as X-rays, and then it mainly measures 2-point correlations in a structure. And then these 2-point correlations are not mentioned anymore in the rest of the snapshot. So here we thought, is it really necessary to have this technical term 2-point correlations in here if it's not mentioned anymore in the rest of the snapshot? And we decided to remove it, and instead of that, elaborate a little bit more on X-rays. So we changed the text. It now reads, to study the atomic order in crystals, physicists invented X-ray crystallography. Then we explain a little bit about this. And then figure 3a shows a point-like pattern. Figure 3b shows a device for X-ray crystallography. So these are the two figures that we created and added to the snapshot. Again, with the idea being that figures make the whole thing more accessible, it looks more attractive, and it also helps readers to digest the explanations in the text. And the next example has a third point still. So here, the snapshot was very good, very accessible. It contained nice figures already in the version that the authors sent us, but the author didn't really say something about ongoing mathematical research. He gave a nice introduction of Navier-Stokes equations. That was wonderful to read, but he didn't say anything about himself. So I wrote a note to him, displayed in blue here, and I read it. You're very welcome to insert a paragraph where you explain on a much more advanced mathematical level what the main steps of your own work were. And the author fortunately agreed with me that he could do that, and he inserted an entire new section, a short discussion of subcritical transition for advanced readers, which is on a more difficult mathematical level than the rest of the snapshot. But we thought that for high school students, maybe they can skip this section, but people who already have a bachelor's degree in mathematics, for example, but are not specialized in PDE, might well understand this section. So it's more interesting for them. They might already know all the rest of the snapshot. And he wrote this entire page explaining his own published research. And one last example that I'm going to show you is where we just try to improve the visual quality of the snapshot. So this snapshot was also very good, but it contained these pictures which are certainly not optimal. So I wrote to the author, is it maybe possible to just recreate these photographs? And he happily agreed and prepared these new photographs that are much clearer and nicer. Now Moritz will present more examples.
Yes, and you see here that there are some robots. Just on the bottom picture, there's some moving robots, and they assemble to a ladder. Just so you know what you're seeing on this picture. Staying with adding pictures, here the author described a graph structure on the arithmetic progressions, and it didn't add a picture, and it's very nice to add a picture here to just grasp the graph that he's describing. Although it's an infinite graph, you can kind of start with the top and then put some dots in the bottom, and everybody sees how this binary tree is continues. This is one more example, and then we also help out the authors with LaTeX problems. Oh, sorry. Before the LaTeX problems, here's another thing that often occurs. Often, the authors are used to saying it is easy to check, it is trivial to see, you can check yourself, and so on. And then sometimes for the readers, it's probably not so easy to check. And we don't want to assign too many exercises, and this is why we often elaborate then on the proofs that are easy to check. In this case, the blue thing is the elaboration of the black sentence, so it's much longer, and it's only one implication of two implications that needed to be shown. But the other implication then is really left to the reader after he has seen the one implication, he can do the other one also. Okay, and the last thing, LaTeX problems here, the author is trying to explain what p-adic numbers are, or 10-adic numbers in this case, and he wants to say that the numbers get smaller to the left, and he used 3 different font sizes, and to make that look nicer, we used continuous font sizes to make the numbers smaller. And this is also our job to fix like typography things. So, I mean, one reason why it's so important to us that we communicate current research is because often as a mathematician, people say to me, well, I mean, you do math, I mean, surely everything is already known. What is there new discoveries going on? And this shows interested readers that are indeed new discoveries going on. And it turns out that these snapshots are not only read by our target audience, but also by more advanced mathematicians from a different field who can maybe digest these snapshots also faster, but are also interested in those snapshots. So when I walk around, I sometimes see them printed out already for some professors giving it to their students and so on. So we want to finish with a few questions you might have. We want to know from you, if you have read the snapshots, what you like about it, what can we do better, and are they accessible enough, and what other problems in communicating current research do you see? And this is all we want to say. Thanks.
Do we have any answers to these questions, or questions to these answers? Yes.
Do you have public to test your snapshots when they are finished? When you think they are finished, because you know the math, you can understand all before and after.
I think it's a very good question. It's true. We never officially tested the snapshots with high school students or with undergraduate students of mathematics. So at the moment, we don't have any official feedback system or evaluation system, but that's something we might think about in the future to implement. It would be important to do, actually.
Another thing, on the French website Images des Maths, they try, I don't know if it's good, if it's good done or not, but they try to give a color to say it is more or less difficult. To say, okay, we try to do easy, but it's real hard math. So we think that is harder, we think it's easier.
I think this is a great idea, and it's true that the difficulty of the snapshots varies. It varies not only between the snapshots, but also often within a snapshot. Often, as Johannes gave an example, we sometimes have like a warning section where we have a disclaimer. The next paragraph is going to be difficult to understand. You can skip over it, feel free. It's not used later in the text. We do this without a color coding, but it might be really useful to do this on the website, like to color code the things. On the other hand, it's hard to do this objectively, of course, right? Because sometimes it's also a personal taste question of what's difficult and what's not difficult.
But I think one point is that we really need to make sure that they aren't too difficult. So we once had a snapshot starting with, I think, we consider the zeta function in 2 arguments or something was the first sentence of the snapshot. So this is something we wouldn't consider a level that we can work with. So this would be we wouldn't even give it red color, but try to change it and make it more accessible with the author.
Quite often it is, they have very accessible first few pages. So often it's like the introduction in a paragraph where they're not, it's very understandable. So I think the level of difficulty that varies within the snapshots is much more, much greater than what goes on between snapshots.
I just wanted to ask about the team. I mean, how many research mathematicians do you have in the team? How many editorial sort of experts do you have in the team?
So there's one senior editor, and I think we have 6 or so, and all of them have some sort of math degree. There's, so, I mean...
and what about publishing experience and things like that? I mean, working, I mean, not mathematical publishing experience, but experience in sort of journalism and things like that.
Well, I can only speak for myself. I don't have much other experience, but I mean, I don't know what the other junior editors really have done so far. But I mean, many. One of them is, for example, an editor of a big journal for many years. You want to say something?
I think also here there is room for improvement. So the whole idea of the project is that you need to have a mathematical background in order to edit this. If you have a publishing background also, that's a plus. And of course, I think we would like to bring more publishing expertise to the team. But yeah, at the moment, as Moritz said, there's one professional editor on the team, and all the others have some experience but no professional training.
Yeah, and we have native speakers in both English and German, and also, I mean, between the junior editors. So if I edit an English snapshot and have like a language question that I feel I cannot answer, then I ask like an American who can answer this more competently.
Any further questions or comments?
Sorry. I love that project, first of all. How do you choose the topics? Because Zentralblatt counts 100,000 papers a year at the moment. So how do you choose which parts are important?
The way it works is that every week in Oberwolfach there's a workshop, and at every workshop, which are distributed among the topics of all math topics, people are asked who's willing to write a snapshots, and sometimes the organizers also assign a snapshots to someone. So this is what makes it possible to cover a wide area. So basically we do this, we choose the snapshots from Oberwolfach. So.
Do you perhaps think also of adding material, especially for instance, when Fields Medal winners? So you have, as a journalist, I want to find material on what did they do for the prize, or Abel Prize winners, or something like that. So cooperation.
That's a good idea. I mean, I haven't thought about this, but.
So, as Moritz said, at the moment these snapshots are written by people who come to Oberwolfach workshops. And if one of the prize winners happens to come to an Oberwolfach workshop, of course we would be very pleased to see that person write a snapshot. But what I saw in several snapshots that appeared already is that people refer to the big prizes. So for example, the one on Navier-Stokes equations, of course, mentions that this is a millennium problem and that many people have been working on this for more than a century. So you see some connections to these big prizes, but so far no Fields medalist has written a snapshot, I think.
Yeah, often the problems that are solved by Fields medalists are then also discussed in a snapshot in some sense. I mean, sphere packing was discussed in one, although it's not, it hasn't gotten hailed as a Fields medal. It's certainly a topic that math journalists are interested in, and this was also discussed in one snapshot. Yeah.
If there's no further questions or comments, let's thank the speakers again.